Thus far, I have created the dust shroud for the miter saw, which you can see here. My plans called for the dust box to be about 40 inches wide. After I got the saw in here, started playing with all the bevels and miters, which I did at Menards before I bought it, but didn't realize how large the extent of the machine was once it was fully beveled, fully mitered, swung to both sides. So I underestimated the width needed to house the saw and let it do every single motion to its full extent. So I had to make some modifications here. You can see this side of the box comes up and over my top and wraps up. That's so I can get a full 45-degree bevel with a full 45-degree miter to the that'd be to the left. Unfortunately, the right-hand side, with the complexity of the dust collection line, I wasn't able to do that same extension, so I am going to lose beveling it and mitering it to the right. I think I'm limited to maybe 22-degree bevel and like a 40-degree or 45-degree miter. So I can do them, of course, independently, just not together. So honestly, it'll be probably at 90 degrees 90% of the time anyway. But that's fine. Some other things I had to do is I wanted to eat up some of the air volume in here, since the dust collection, that's just wasted energy getting up there. So I boxed in the corners with some 3/4 inch triangles and then just some 1/4 inch skin on them to seal that up. So far so good. Some other things I did: made some covers to seal up around the saw when it's at 90. So I have one for the left hand side and the right hand side, which worked pretty well. And I just got done calibrating the saw, so 90 degrees for the miter, 90 degrees for the bevel, make sure it's all set up right. So it's all set up now, all ready to be used. I was using a little bit yesterday, but it was out of calibration quite a bit. Next step, get the saw back into place, temporarily mount it back to the top here with just some screws. I'll eventually bolt it down later to the top once I get all the shelving up, all the fences up. I'll then fine tune it, get that position, and bolt that down. Next step is to build a shelf for a cabinet over here, and then a cabinet on the other side of the two cabinets on the other side of the miter saw station. And then that's pretty much it for the main construction. And then after that, it's a lot of drawers. The middle section of the miter saw station comprises of these 3 individual shelf/cabinet pieces. They one will go to the left of the dust box, and then 2 will go to the right. They have a space down at the bottom of them that's about 6 inches high, and that's where that first divider is going right now. That is there because that's where the fence is going to be at. So there's just a bunch of dead space, unfortunately, wasted behind that because I chose to use a fence on my miter saw station. So if you wouldn't need a fence on yours, and you could use that as just maybe a drawer, or make a taller drawer, or use that as just kind of free space to slide things in and out of. Building these shelves is really straightforward. Just put the first one on there with spacers, so you have the same height on both sides, and then just work your way up. And then they're glued and screwed from the outside. To do the very top shelf, which is flush with the top of the shelf sides here, I just flip the unit over and hold everything flat to my assembly table. As you saw, the first one had a shelf that was just a little outside of the side here, so I had to take a jack plane and knock that down a little bit. From there, I can square up the cabinet if it needs any with that parallel clamp and put the back on, and then I'm attaching it with some staples. And the first one's done. Moving on to the second one here. Assembly, about the same way. My second one I've learned from the first, so I did a little bit smarter here, having the thing already set up right. And then I'm laying out my marks as well ahead of time before I get the shelf in place. But the process is exactly the same. Use spacers to set the height of that first shelf. Glue the shelf in place and then drill some holes from the outside and drive some screws. Once I get the shelf assembled, I'm going to take it over and mark out where the electrical boxes are and the conduit, and I have to cut out the back around the electrical plugs and around the conduit, and then I also have to cut the side around the conduit. So I did all this with a jigsaw. Once it fits, it's nice in place. Those middle sections of cabinets actually get pocket hole screws on the outside of them, and then they get driven down into the top of the lower cabinets. Once the section of shelving is fully attached, I'm going through here and attaching hardwood edging to the front of the cabinets. I want to hide that ugly plywood edge and then as well make it more durable and less resistant to chipping, since my hand will be going in and out of there quite a bit. It'd be pretty easy to catch my hand or a tool on it and chip the edge, and probably lead to splinters in the future. Plus it looks nice. My trim work usually consists of cutting it maybe once, twice, 3 times or 4 times before I get to the right size. And then sometimes I have to start over because I cut too much off. So it's kind of a slow process, but I just use a little bit of glue on the back of the trim and then shoot pin nails into it. This is the large piece of trim for the very front of the, I guess I'll call it the work surface. It's a lot wider because it actually is 2 to 3 pieces of plywood depending on what section of the cabinet. So this is the very last cabinet box I'm making. This is going to go on the very far upper right hand side. So this is the third level of cabinets or shelving. In the uppermost units, I got a little smarter here and drilled all my shelf pin holes before I made the cabinets, which is a lot easier on the shoulders and elbows if it's right below you the entire time. This last cabinet's very simple construction, just butting all the edges up, gluing, drilling, and screwing. This cabinet here had a lot of warped plywood. It was my last piece, and it was the worst piece of plywood, and it was pretty warped. So up here, I'm trying to mount the cabinet by drilling it into the cabinet next to it and below it, but it was so out of kind of warp on the side. I actually had to unmount it from the cabinet to the left and just mount to the bottom, and then I actually used a metal L bracket to attach it to a stud in the back of the wall to keep it nice and rigid and sturdy. Caw-caw. One item I don't touch much on in the videos is the fence. This blue line represents where the fence is going to go, and it was a chalk line, and it's basically along the entire length of the miter saw station, and I'm using that to align my fence to it, and then I'm using that plus some spacers, which are drill bits, to align the fence of my miter saw. I want the miter saw out just a little bit. I think I used maybe 1/8 inch drill bits to get that spaced out far enough. That's to allow any warped wood and whatever to still ride on the miter saw fence itself. And so once I got this position, I was able to securely and permanently mount the miter saw to the top of the cabinet. Okay, so the miter saw station is coming along nicely here. Some of the things I've been doing, I've been working on the hardwood edging for the plywood, so you can see a solid chunk of white oak up here, glued and screwed into the plywood edge. Those will eventually get plugs in them. I've also trimmed out all the plywood edging along the stand thus far on the bottom and the middle section. Also made some removable shelves for shelf pin holes and added the shelf pin holes as well. Last night I was able to get the upper cabinet into place and screwed down. That last one was giving me some trouble, but that's in. So one detail to point out is the fence on the miter saw station. I'm trying to reuse the Craig track system, which worked completely well and fine on my other miter saw station, which was just a fence and nothing behind it. With this setup, that's more of a challenge because the T-track is on the back side of the rail, and so that doesn't leave much clearance on top for any type of knobs or little levers or whatever you do want to tighten your stop down. So I've had to make up some different laminations here to get the fence to work. So what I have is I have a short board right up against the miter saw station, which has pocket screws going down into the top of this, which is helpful somewhat. It helps stiffen up the top of the work surface because this is kind of like a spine running down the center of it, so it does kind of help stiffen it up. Then on top of this, I have a 1/4 inch piece of plywood, and then another piece of 3/4 inch plywood in front of this that you can see is face screwed into the previous piece of plywood. That gives me some offset between the track and the miter saw station to be able to put a small knurled knob or one of those little handles that you can tighten up, pull up, release, tighten again, to try to get something in there that will work. I didn't realize it at the time, but the Craig flip stop and production stop won't work in this type of application, which is unfortunate because I have a ton of this track. I have like 12 feet of it, so I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to try to use it the way it is and try to come up with my own custom flip stop that'll come down and you can still access it from the top, and it'll give clearance to the miter saw station, all that stuff. So I've been working on some drawings for that yesterday. I'll probably get that done no time soon, probably be after I get all the rest of the stuff built. I do have to take the face screws back out of the fence, pull that off, and attach this track because it attaches from the back. So once again, this isn't the best application for the Craig precision miter track. Next up on the to-do list is to glue and plug these holes. I have a whole bunch of plugs here that'll go in there, plug those holes up, make that look nice and pretty. I will then cut the adjustable shelving for the upper cabinets. I have I don't have a whole lot of 3/4 inch plywood left. I have maybe enough to make, looks like 4 shelves over there. So I'll make those out of 3/4 inch, and then the other stuff I'll just make out of 1/2 inch plywood, so I have plenty of that. I'll then trim out all this upper cabinet and the floating and then the adjustable shelves that I make today. And after that, it gets on to the exciting part of cleaning this garage up, because it is a absolute disaster. I have stuff, as you can see, just laying everywhere. I had a whole bunch of stuff up on the top of the miter saw station, and then when I went to go put this top section up, I had to take it all back down and just scattered about. So I need to clean this place up because it's getting hard to work in here. So I'll clean that up after I trim this out and get the floating shelves made, and then after that it's on to all the drawers. I have a lot to make, These will be a bank of drawers here, a bank of drawers, a bank of really big drawers, and then each one of these openings, I shouldn't say each one of these, those 2 openings there will get drawers. So, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe like 20-ish drawers, 25 drawers to make. So that'll be awesome to get that milestone done. I'm trying to think about anything else. That's going to do it for the second video. I appreciate everyone watching. Please don't forget to like or subscribe to my channel. Thank you.